Are you on?
Yes, right here. Sorry, I stopped my video for a second.
Right.
First, just a disclaimer as far, right on time. That might be happening a lot with my door as cats come and go. So sorry if that's a distraction to people. Also, one of my cats is very talkative. So I'll just apologize for that up front. It's all part of the joys of Zoom life that we're all having. First of all, thank you, Angela, for inviting me. Really excited to have any opportunity to come and be part of community education around what is in this agreement, and also who we are and what we do. I know a lot of folks in this meeting personally, and a lot of the people in this meeting are probably already familiar with legal services in Northern California. But for those who are not as familiar, Legal Services of Northern California is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. We provide free legal services to people experiencing poverty and to the most vulnerable citizens in 23 Northern California counties. We provide free legal advice, representation, and advocacy in the areas of affordable housing, public benefits, health, education, pensions, disaster recovery, and civil rights. We've been in our Chico office since 1977. We're over at 6th and Normal, although as you might be able to guess, I'm not physically there right now, and because of COVID. And as soon as I have a better idea of what our office situation is going to be regarding walk-ins and so forth, I'll be happy to update the group. People can still call our main line 345-9491 to schedule appointments. And our Chico office serves Butte, Glenn, and Plumas counties, and also parts of Colusa and Tehama counties. So this task force is a forum for community education and information sharing. So I'm here only to discuss what is in the settlement agreement in furtherance of that mission. I'm not here to provide commentary about what's in it. I understand and completely respect that people across the spectrum have differing views about what is in this agreement, parts that are good, parts that are bad, what they think might be missing. What I'm here, and I know there are probably people on this in this meeting who have read every single word of it. There are probably people who have read none of it. So this is an opportunity for us to get on the same page, to understand the process moving forward, and so that we can all move together and continue working towards solutions. So with that, I will be going through what's in it. It will be somewhat dry, so it might. So I promise I'm not reading every word of it, because that would be awful. So I'll be going through the main points of what's in it, and then we can have Q&A afterwards. If anyone has questions about the process and how things work. I'm really glad to be here, especially because a perfect example of why this continuing education discussion about the settlement is important is there's a rumor going around, for example, that there's a wait list for the pallet shelter site. I know nothing about that. As far as I know, there is no official wait list of any kind. And so that's a perfect example of why this type of education is important. And this is the kind of work that Legal Services does. Anytime we happen to be more involved in this particular policy change that is in the works. But anytime there are major changes in policy or law that affect our community, we we give presentations, we give out materials so people can understand what their rights are and what processes may affect them, just like what I'm doing today. So first off, there's a couple main portions in the settlement. One discusses the new pallet shelter site that people are quite familiar with at this point, with 177 pallet shelters that have locking doors, that have air conditioning, heat, power outlet. They'll have lighting, smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. They'll have emergency exits. They have 2 beds, but the settlement provides that people cannot be forced to share if they don't want to. But if people want to, if there's couples or people that want to be roommates, they can absolutely choose to do that. In the pallet shelter site, the settlement provides that there have to be at least 3 toilets and 2 hand washing stations for every 50 people, that showers need to be made available at least once a week, and that there be a hot water space on site for people who have additional bathing and care needs when those showers are not available. There needs to be laundry made available to everyone at least once a week. A hospitality tent that will provide 3 meals per day. Personal property can be stored inside the pallet shelter. What the settlement provides that there can be 1 bike and 1 reasonably sized trailer, or that the operator can choose to limit the size of the trailer within reason if they so choose. There cannot be a drug testing or sobriety requirement for people to be in the shelter. Rules are going to be based on behavior, and there will be no requirement that people participate in a program in order to remain in the house, living in the pallet shelter site. The pallet shelter site will be open 24/7. There will be no time limit on the amount of time that people can be at the pallet shelter site. If someone is denied admission to the shelter site because they don't fit the admission criteria, which I should say, what we have in the settlement is a set of minimum rules and standards, but the city and Legal Services in Northern California and our plaintiffs are in the middle of a meet and confer process about finalizing all the rules for the pallet shelter site. And I don't want to speak for the city, but I imagine that as soon as that is all done, that will be made public for everyone. These are a set of minimum standards in the settlement that the rules must meet. And because frankly, if we were to try to write out the entire rule, every rule for every part of the implementation of this settlement and all the procedures, it would be much, much longer than it is now. And nobody wants something that long. I mentioned that rules which have not yet been finalized are going need to be based on behavior, but they need to have a notice. And if someone violates the rules, there needs to be a notice, an opportunity to cure, and a grievance process. And unless if there is an immediate risk of physical harm to others, then that may be an exception to the opportunity to cure. And also, if I think I said this already, but if folks are denied admission based on the yet to be finalized admissions rules, then there is a notice and grievance process for that as well. That is required in the settlement. So because there are different sections, I think it might be easier to stop here. And if anyone has questions that about what is in the settlement regarding the pallet shelter site, I can take a few of those now because I know we only have 30 minutes, but so I'll have a couple short question breaks as we go along, as we kind of go through the sections. And then at the end, if there are any other questions before my time runs out, then we can do that as well. So after at this point, does anyone have any questions or anything they're hearing that they'd like to have clarified about the pallet shelter site? Okay, we're going to have a very efficient presentation potentially. So the next part that that the settlement, the next major portion of the settlement is when and how enforcement of the city's of the city's rules against camping on public property and against storing personal property on public property when can those be enforced and how? The settlement provides that that once the pallet shelter site is up and running with at least 50 units available, and once it meets all the requirements that are listed in the settlement agreement, at that point, the city can begin enforcing its camping and personal property storage laws and its ordinances. First, if the city must provide a notice to the city, or excuse me, to Legal Services in Northern California, that is a confidential notice that says where they plan to, that says the area that they plan to enforce, and that says how many people are in that area and how many pallet shelters or beds at the Torres shelter are available, in order to, because it is based on it is based on enforcement. It is based on enforcing only if there are only if there is sufficient shelter available for the people who are in the location where the enforcement is taking place. So the first step is that the city must provide a confidential notice with that information, and 7 days for Legal Services in Northern California to confirm that is in fact correct. If there are 5 people or fewer in the area where the city is planning to enforce, then that time period is shorter. It's only then it is only a 3-day. There's 3 days to confirm that, because obviously it's much easier to confirm if there's only a few people. So the city can do this for up to 3 locations at a time if there's 50 or less people. So assuming that that is all done properly, that the next step is an outreach and engagement process. That's a 7-day process where an outreach team that is a 7-day process where an outreach team meets with people in that location, attempts to meet with all of them, and assesses if the available. First, it provides education about about the whole spectrum of opportunities of shelter that is available, and tries to connect people with whatever services that they're interested in that would be appropriate for their situation. If someone and then also they assess for whether that person specifically can be appropriately sheltered in either the pallet shelter site or in the sorry, again, cat, or the Torres, or a bed in the Torres shelter. And there's a process in the settlement for determining whether or not the person's condition and situation makes them appropriate for those sites. If this outreach team is supposed to then provide written determination to that person of what is available, and if they are unable to meet with every person, they have to document at least 5 attempts to show that everyone has been given ample opportunity, and leave a notice that provides their information so that the person can follow up with the outreach team if they've been missed. If there is someone who has been, if there is a situation where the say neither the Torres shelter or the pallet shelter site is appropriate for an individual, which for reasons that could be separation of family members, disabilities, then, and as well as other reasons, and that process is ongoing, then those people are provided a list of 3 public property locations where they can relocate to, and where where they will not be asked to relocate again for at least 60 days. And also for people for whom their conditions make the Torres shelter or the pallet shelter site inappropriate, if they do not have an appropriate available shelter, then they can only be moved twice in a 12-month period. So that is, as I warned, a really dry run through of the process. And does anyone have any questions about that and how that works?
I have a question about that. And this may just not be clear yet. But do we have any idea of locations? I mean, that city properties that have been deemed appropriate and acceptable for this?
So like if the outreach and engagement team determines that someone is not able for whatever reason to go to either the pallet shelter site or to a bed in the Torres shelter, so then the notice provides 3 public property sites. It does not, in our settlement, we don't specify where those have to be and how and what those properties, specific properties, where that has to be. That is to be determined by the city at their discretion.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. That's, yeah. So the settlement provides that someone who does not have an appropriate shelter space available to them can only be asked to relocate twice in a 12-month period. If they are moved, sorry, I'm not. So someone is given a list of 3 places they can go to. They go to one, and they go to one of those places, and then they voluntarily go somewhere else. Is that what you're saying? I think we'll have to see if that comes up. And then at this moment, off the top of my head, I don't want to speculate what that would be. So that's something that I could get back to you about. But right at this moment, I want to be very careful about hypotheticals. And so, yeah, I'm happy to get back to you on that right this second. I don't think I can appropriately offer an answer because I'm speaking for only myself, and that wouldn't be something I can do. Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Okay, so the other major section regarding enforcement is the personal property storage ordinances. Now moving forward, there will be a notice that is required to be provided both prior to removing property and also after removal of property, if that takes place. Property must first be present in a personal property must first be stored in a public location for 24 hours before that process begins. At that point, the city may provide a 72-hour notice of potential property removal, and that notice must include things like the property description, the date and time of the notice, information about how to get the property back if it ends up being removed, and that the property may be destroyed after 90 days. And there are some limited exceptions for property that presents a health and safety threat or that is contraband as well. So let's say the 72 hours are up. Then at that point, there is a post-removal notice, and that notice must be, and that will look very similar. It will give a description of the property, the date and time of the removal, and again, information about how and where to get the property back, and that it will be held for at least 90 days. And again, there are exceptions for imminent health and safety threat or property that presents an imminent threat of health and safety or contraband. Now, property that is vital to a person's survival, specifically in the settlement, we list medication, medical equipment, tents, sleeping bags, and blankets. Those must be made available within 1 business day. And the current practice is that property is stored out at the police station. I've every reason to believe that will be the same location moving forward. There is also a property relocation notice that can be provided that can be provided if property has to be moved immediately in certain situations. And so this is an exception to the 72-hour notice, but it is only for relocation. It is not for removal. If there is personal property that is substantially obstructing city construction, maintenance, repair, landscaping operations on public land, or that is obstructing an entrance, an exit, a driveway, or a loading dock, then that personal property can be moved out of the way as is necessary. And there will be a notice provided both, if possible, at the location where it was moved from or as close as possible. And then also a notice at the location where the property is moved to that explains, that describes the property, provides the date and time of the relocation, where it was moved from, where it was moved to, and and then also if a person is placed in a situation that is worse than their prior location because of a disability, then they can request and they're unable to rectify that situation because of their disabilities. They can request assistance. Because again, this was done without any notice. And I should also add, when I say where these notices will be placed, in all situations, if it's possible to determine who the property owner is on site and that person is there, then you hand that person the notice rather than as well. So that is as much as I can simplify the new rules in the settlement. That's kind of a basic overview of where is let's say there is not a clear answer and both sides disagree about the question that you brought forward. So then that would potentially be something that could go through the dispute resolution process that is built into the settlement. The purpose of the dispute resolution process is, as it says, resolve disputes. So it could be used looking forward in order to, if either side thinks there is a situation that needs to be resolved that maybe wasn't fully contemplated or outlined in the settlement. Or if one side believes that the other side is doing something to violate what is in the settlement. We have to first meet and confer, fancy way for saying we need to talk about it, try to resolve it among ourselves. That's step one. Step two is an informal, what I'm sure will still end up being Zoom conference with the judge, the way things are. Maybe someday we'll be able to have face-to-face meetings. And then after that, if it's still after having an informal, what is basically a mediation with the judge to try and resolve it, if a resolution still cannot be reached, then there will be a formal hearing before the judge where we will provide briefing about our opinion about what is correct and their opinion about what is correct. And then the judge will make a decision and both sides have to abide by it. And with that is my overview of the procedures that are in the settlement. If I missed anything vital, people can absolutely shoot me questions later. I'm happy to do what I can to provide information about what's in here, so we can all understand it fully moving forward, just as we need to do with any change in law or policy. So I have completely lost track of time. Am I out of time, Angela? Where are we at?
You are fine.
Okay, I think I have 3 minutes.
You
Right?
there's no limit. We're here for a bit. So folks have questions, unless you have to go, please ask them.
I can hang out a little extra. That's fine.
Hi, Angela.
Oh, sure. Oh, can I just say, you reminded me, the judge's decision is final. There's no appeal. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yes, thank you for clarifying that. Yes. That would be an opinion on my part, so I can't answer that. Sorry, I can only talk about what is actually in the settlement, and there's a process. There's a process for modifications to settlements, but what's in the settlement now is what we have to follow moving forward, and modifications are a whole different discussion.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying necessarily that can't be included in the dispute resolution process. I'm saying that I'm not giving an opinion either way.
All right, and I have one question. I think maybe somebody else is waiting as well. Is there this is just kind of a more general question. Is there a gag order in place or anything that prevents city staff or council from starting to talk about this with the community?
So all discussion, a big part of the reason why I'm sticking only to the settlement is I don't want to give away anything that was said during the process that led up to this, because everything that is said in settlement discussions is confidential.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to accidentally give the appearance that, if I favored certain parts of the settlement versus others, then that's a clue into like maybe what we wanted or what they wanted or what have you. This is what we agreed on, and this is the final result. So at this point, both sides have reached an agreement, and we're ready to implement it, to make it work, and move forward with it. And what was discussed in the settlement conference has to remain confidential. That's not technically the same as a gag order, but it is federal law. So
Got it. Okay, thank you. Anybody else have questions?
This is Laura Page with Congressman LaMalfa's office. Can you hear me?
yeah, no problem.
Okay, great. I just had a question going back to when you do the outreach. I'm sure, I don't believe this is stipulated in the agreement, but just
Okay.
curious,
Well,
when you first make the outreach to the people in the unsanctioned camps, you mentioned that part of the piece of that outreach, the first steps would be some education. Would that also include education on why it's illegal to be camping in those enforceable areas? Just to kind of piggyback a little bit on what Rob Berry is saying, as far as if one of these individuals decides they don't care for the opportunities that the city has availed them of, and they want to go back to where they were, will they be educated on why they can't do that and why that's against the laws of the city?
so if you'll bear with me for just a moment, I have seen so many versions of this. I'm flipping through the actual agreement now to make sure. I don't believe that that we specify exactly what you're talking about. I don't think the settlement specifies that needs to be stated. That needs to be part of the discussion. In fact, I'm not. So I'm just going to flip through it. I'm sorry. As you can imagine, I have seen many versions of what is in here. And so I want to be absolutely certain that I am not straying from it in any way. And so it means the very entertaining part of listening to me talk while I flip through pages.
So if it isn't specified as something to say in the script, does that mean that it can't be said?
So there is no script in here.
Okay, that's what
yeah.
I didn't see any, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, probably the easier way to answer your question, as far as what the subjects of that need to be, is that is all part of the meet and confer process. I mentioned that we're going through, and actually I'm glad you asked this, because it's something that I skipped over when I was kind of going through it before. I mentioned that the shelter site rules, admissions, grievance process, etc. Behavioral conduct rules. I mentioned that those are going to go through a meet and confer process where we can all agree on what those final rules are. The outreach and engagement process, which I always want to call outreach and education, but it is outreach and engagement, that process also is subject to a similar meet and confer process, for where that process, all the notices that are involved, are all going to be finalized. So specifically what topics they will cover, what types of referrals, what materials will be used, is all something, that level, granular level of detail is something that we will all agree upon. I don't believe that the settlement discusses educating people on what I don't think it specifically says that you need to tell the people who are out there the kinds of things that you mentioned. So that's kind of a non-answer. So, or that's not a direct answer, but because I don't think the settlement says one way or the other on that.
Thanks so much, Cory. Anybody else have questions?
I'm sorry, it took me so long because I thought I'd be better at flipping and talking at the same time, but I clearly wasn't. As I'm looking at it, I don't see. Yeah, it discusses the assessment process, but not the information, the information about services that can be provided.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Anybody else have any questions for Cory? All right. Well, Cory, I guess you're free.
Well, I'm going to stick around and listen in because I need to stay up to date on what everybody else is doing. So I'm excited to be
Awesome.
able to do that more often.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. All right.